Hello everybody, welcome to the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. My name is Angie Grove, I'm the executive director here, and I welcome you to our free monthly lecture series. This is the last month in 2024, so we do not do a lecture in December, but we do have lectures already lined up for 2025, which you can find in our newsletter, and very soon will be posted onto our website as well. But I just want to quickly put out January 19th will be the first lecture in 2025. It will be Marge Brujak, and the topic will be Abenaki history. And that will be an online on Zoom only one, since it'll be in January and the weather can be a bit unpredictable. So you can join us from the comfort of your home, and the registration link will be on our website soon. Okay, I also want to thank our sponsors for this program and all of our community enrichment series, which includes our educational field trips and our historical reenactment living history programs. So please thank with me AARP Vermont, North Country Federal Credit Union, M&T Bank, and Burlington Heritage Ford and Toyota. Okay, and with that, I am now going to introduce one of the board members here at the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum, who will be introducing the speaker. All of our board members are volunteers, and they help me and all of the other volunteers run this nonprofit community museum. So please welcome to the stage Terry Silva. Yay.
Good afternoon, everybody. I had to be reminded that it is afternoon because on the weekend I really don't know what it is. Our speaker today practically runs the whole place. She's really great, and she has a lot of history here, which will be very interesting. I will read to you what it says on her bio. Lauren Chicote has been with the Winooski Valley Park District for over 12 years, starting as an AmeriCorps member leading environmental education programming, and now as operations manager, overseeing daily functions of the organization, building partnerships, and assisting with project management. Lauren has a degree in environmental science, natural resources from the University of Vermont, and she has a deep passion for conservation and equitable outdoor recreation, and can often be found outside hiking, biking, paddling, or skiing. Let's welcome Lauren Chicote.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Angie. Welcome. As Terry said, my name is Lauren Chicote, and I'm the operations manager with the Winooski Valley Park District. As she mentioned, I've been here for almost over 13 years now. Started in doing environmental education, where I led service learning groups here, doing various environmental education programs, including a lot of invasive management, which is part of our conservation strategy for the Park District. I also did a lot of watershed environmental education and wetland ecology. As Terry mentioned, my background is in environmental science and natural resources. I've spent most of my life outside exploring, and as she said, you can usually find me at one of our parks walking around on the trails, usually with my dog, although now she's getting older and can't quite go as far these days. Sorry, scrolling through my notes is a little tricky. All right. So this presentation is going to be a little bit more just on the general background of the Winooski Valley Park District and our approaches to conservation, management, and stewardship of our lands. There will be time for questions at the end, but I'm also happy to answer any questions if they come up throughout the presentation. All right, so what is the Winooski Valley Park District? We are a cooperative partnership of 8 member communities located along the Winooski River who share a common interest in protecting natural resources in the river valley. We're one of the, just randomly skipped ahead on me. Okay. We're one of the largest urban natural areas. We manage one of the largest systems of urban natural areas in Vermont. Our mission is to plan, acquire, and manage lands and waters within the boundaries of our.
You have it on play.
I guess so, and I'm not sure which one. Okay, maybe that will stop that from skipping ahead on me. All right. So yes, so our mission is to plan and acquire. Nope.
Escape and then restart it.
Okay. It's been a little while since I have done like a presentation. Okay. I think it has like an icon that does have play going, so I don't know. And I did try to like undo that one.
Do you think it's doing itself?
Oh, maybe. Do you just pause it? Sorry about this, technical difficulties. It's like tracking up there. Yeah, like this little icon was.
If you just hit pause, will it be fine now?
I don't know.
Let's see if it starts it over. It's not hitting play up there,
Okay.
so hopefully that will work. Fingers crossed.
Okay. All right. Yes. You've probably all had time to read our mission, so I won't read that again. But the Park District we're uniquely both a nonprofit and an incorporated Vermont municipality comprised of 8 member communities, similar to other intermunicipal entities like the Chittenden Solid Waste District and the regional planning commissions like the Chittenden Regional Planning Commission. Our member communities, which I'll talk about in a little bit, provide roughly 80% of our annual operating budget. These amounts for each member community is based on a formula that takes into account both the population and grand list totals for each member community. The rest of our funding comes through leasing of several entities at this property here, including the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum, through a cooperative partnership. We also lease to the Burlington Forest Preschool. They operate an environmental education preschool here and have 2 classrooms. So if you're down here during the school year, you'll see lots of kids running around in all sorts of weather, doing some amazing activities. We love having them around. We also have 2 caretaker residents at 2 of our parks, one of which is here, and the other is at Colchester Pond, that help carry out some basic operations and ground maintenance, along with like security and just kind of being our eyes and ears at those parks. They also open and close the gates to those parks each day. We also rent our picnic shelter here at the Ethan Allen Homestead that you've probably seen coming in on your drive in. We rent that space for families and other like small community events. We also have some farm field rent. We rent out some farm fields at several of our parks to 2 local farmers that they use it for hay to feed their dairy herds. We also get funding for project-specific grants. Those are usually to fund some larger trail maintenance projects. And we also do some contracted parks maintenance, where we will do maintenance projects, building bridges, trail work on lands that we don't manage and own. So we provide that service to our member communities to help them manage their trails and natural areas, along with communities that aren't part of our member community. And we also receive a very small amount of donations each year from park users and supporters. But we're not aside from our member communities, we're not a membership-based organization. We don't compete against our other membership-based entities. And that's a strategic decision so that we're not competing against those for limited funds within the state. We are governed by a board of trustees, which appoints a representative from each member community. Our board develops park policies, devises capital and long-range plans, provides management direction and oversight, evaluates new land acquisitions, and ensures the needs of their respective communities are met in terms of stewardship and conservation. They act as a liaison between us and their member communities. So the Park District has 3 full-time staff, myself as the operations manager, an executive director, and then a park superintendent. Our park superintendent has been with us for over 20 years, and it has...
Go back and I guess that pause at the top.
It is paused still.
Do you want me to come take a look at it?
I don't know. I don't know what else to do. What is this?
Do one more time. It was paused when it moved.
Well,
I guess so.
There might be ghosts in the Allen house.
Yeah, maybe. Just I'll go camera. Yeah.
So when you did, what did you hit to start?
I just hit the little display icon.
Okay. I don't know if that will have it run.
Yeah, it's still
Yeah, but now I think it's just tracking the amount of time.
amount of time. Yeah.
We'll see if that starting it that way differently made it.
Okay.
Or you
Sorry
might just
about
have
that.
to keep hitting that.
Yes. So we can deal with that. All right. Yeah. So in addition to our 3 full-time staff members, we hire. Let's see if pausing this again. That helps. We hire seasonal maintenance staff that helps us with our park management. They mow our lawns, they build our trails, they do invasive plant management, they help manage the picnic shelter and do general cleanup, and also provide some operational or support to our partners that are here on the site. We also rely heavily on volunteers, utilizing hundreds of volunteers each year, including school groups, community groups, and businesses and corporations, local businesses, and some even from out of state that they'll come wanting to do some community service on a retreat here, and we partner with them. We also rely on strategic partnerships with various entities to carry out our stewardship and conservation goals within the region. That includes state departments such as the Vermont Fish and Wildlife and Forest Parks and Rec, the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps. We utilize them a lot to help with bigger trail building projects. That's a great partnership. They get a lot of really high quality work on our park done, and it's a great experience for the youth as part of that program, learning some very tangible skills. We also partner with the Intervale Center and Burlington Parks Rec and Waterfront Department. That partnership has grown into this coalition known as the Burlington Wildways that you might have heard about, that we have strategically decided to partner together with also with Rock Point as part of that coalition to better manage our existing trails in the city of Burlington, since they are interconnected, and also to meet conservation goals as well. We leverage resources, apply for grants, and just knowing what each of those entities are doing has really elevated our ability to get some pretty big conservation projects done within the city. We also work very closely with our member communities and their conservation boards or commissions within each community, also the recreation departments and other city officials and departments when needed. All right, so brief history on the Park District. So by the mid-20th century, threats of development to the rural nature of Vermont, coupled with environmental movement, brought to light the importance of conserving high-value habitats and protecting wetlands and watersheds. The movement for national and regional approaches to environmental protection began to take hold with the formation of Act 250, the regional planning system, and the creation of the National Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA. In response to threats to the Winooski River watershed, the concept of the Park District was formed in 1966 it was an idea proposed by many local leaders in this area, worked together to formulate a plan for the Winooski Valley Park District. And in order to achieve these goals and form this intermunicipal district, legislation was changes were made in the intermunicipal corporation statute to enable such organizations as the Winooski Valley Park District. That legislation passed in 1970. And part of that, the eminent domain was banned from use by the Park District to alleviate any concerns at the time of land taking. So I'll talk a little bit about how we acquire and receive lands a little bit later on. All right. So after the legislation passed to form an intermunicipal district, the Park District was formed in 1972 for the purposes of representing the public's interest in protecting and enhancing the quality environment of the Winooski Valley. So conservation has always been at our core. Our mission actually has, when I was reading documents preparing for this, our mission actually has not really changed at all since our establishment in 1972, which is kind of interesting because most organizations go through a different revamp of their mission, but we have stayed very true to ours. So some of our first acquisitions were Green Mountain Power property near the falls in the city of Winooski, which is now the Salmon Hole property. And in 1973, we came to acquire the first portion of where we are now, the Ethan Allen Homestead. It was known as the Ethan Allen Intervale Farm, from what I was reading. All right, so since the Park District was created, we've continued to acquire land over the years. We now manage just over 170, skipping ahead again. All right, so we now manage just over 1,750 acres of conserved land throughout 18 regional parks, mostly within the lower Winooski, mostly within Chittenden County. We have 12 miles of shoreline along lakes, ponds, and rivers, and we manage a collective 24 miles of hiking trails throughout our park system. Most of our lands are within our wetlands, floodplains. We have quite a bit of land within the special flood hazard area, which I'll talk a little bit about flooding later on. And technically, the entire Winooski River watershed is part of our mission, but we have mostly focused on the lower Winooski and Chittenden County. Mostly it's a capacity issue through only three full-time staff members, traveling to parklands up in the headwaters of the Winooski would be operationally kind of difficult. There are also some other entities up in that area, including like Friends of the Winooski River and other watershed groups that while they don't own land, they do a lot of the same kind of work that we do with stewardship and riparian buffers. So we do work strategically with other partners within the watershed. Our focus is on high priority conservation lands that provide significant habitat for wildlife, including wildlife corridors, wetlands, and floodplains. So our philosophy is that once a piece of land is conserved, it's not truly protected unless it has lasting and proactive system of stewardship in it. We kind of view land acquisitions as like just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to conservation. Putting a piece of property into conservation does not really ensure its like official conservation over time. Those lands still need to be actively managed to protect against invasive plants and also to manage, balance the need for outdoor recreation. So once parks are secured within our system, they are usually, most are managed to provide free year-round recreational access in a way that does not threaten our natural resources. So when we acquire new pieces of land, we'll do environmental and natural resources inventories, environmental assessments on them, see if there's any significant wildlife habitats such as like deer wintering areas, and make sure as we develop the trail systems through those parcels to avoid those areas so that people can still enjoy and have access to these significant areas, but minimize the impact on surrounding wildlife. Some of our parks have actually been deemed that the habitat significance within them is too great, so we actually have not developed trails in them, or we keep a significant portion of them undeveloped, so that we can kind of have that balance. All of our land is permanently protected under easements, reversionary clauses, deed restrictions, or of other attributes that prevent future development. So most of our parks are under conservation easements that are held by a third party, such as a land trust, or the Nature Conservancy, or the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And so acquisitions on large capital projects, so large development of new parks projects, are funded through grants, donations, and strategic partnerships with other organizations. We strategically try to grow incrementally, so that we're not acquiring too much land that we can't, so making it difficult for us to actually fulfill our mission. We're kind of currently at that threshold a little bit in terms of our capacity to manage that without significantly growing our permanent staff system. So that's something we're strategically starting to think about. When we are either offered a land or considering a piece of land for acquisition, we have a very detailed screening process of it that looks at, as I mentioned, the different natural resources aspect of it, and conservation value. The Department of the Agency of Natural Resources, has a really great tool that we use. It's called BioFinder, and their natural resource outlets. So we can look at all of their data to see what is already known on our properties, or the properties that are being offered to us, to help determine whether we want to acquire them and if it fits within our mission. We also do environmental due diligence, so doing environmental assessments to make sure that there aren't any unknown hazards on our properties. Some of parks within our system have had that, where we have, but we've still taken them on and rehabilitated them into natural areas. Woodside Natural Area in Essex, you might be familiar with, across from Fort Ethan Allen off of Route 15, used to be kind of a dumping zone. Same with sections of the Inner Vale here, and also along Riverside Ave, along our Riverwalk Trail. Those are all areas that, before the environmental movement, were just kind of places that people went and dumped, various cars, lots of tires, appliances. So we do strategically want to acquire those lands so that we can sort of clean them up and convert them back into conservation areas. All right. So today, our member communities include the City of Burlington, Town of Colchester, City of Essex Junction, which is actually our newest community member since they split from the Town of Essex just a couple years ago. So also the Town of Essex, one of our member towns, Town of Jericho, City of South Burlington, Town of Williston, and the City of Winooski. So all of our parks are located within those member communities. You might be familiar with some of our parks, such as Colchester Pond, obviously the Ethan Allen Homestead, Salmon Hole, that I mentioned, Woodside, but we also have some smaller parks that some people aren't really familiar with, such as Winooski Gorge in South Burlington and the Muddy Brook Parks. We do have a new acquisition in the works right now in the town of Williston. They were donated a parcel along the Winooski River right across from Global Foundries, and we're working with them to have that transferred over to us and have it to be developed into a community park. We're working with Global Foundries with that right now because to get easement access into the park. One of our requirements for when we're looking at parklands is that it has access for public recreation. This park currently is kind of landlocked, but we're working with Global Foundries to get an easement through their properties so that we can provide access for the park, which would be great because their easement, their access into the park is very well developed, and it would help alleviate some of our management needs, since they have to maintain a significant part of that access via a road to access some of their utilities. There's like a solar farm nearby, so that's a really great strategic partnership for us to kind of have to provide public access and conservation goals. So, kind of mentioned, a lot of our parks are heavily used for a variety of outdoor recreation activities, such as kayaking and canoe access, fishing access, wildlife viewing, running, dog walking, snowshoeing, skiing, all sorts of both passive and active recreation. We don't allow motorized vehicles out on our trails, and aside from designated bike paths that run through our parks, we also don't allow bikes out on our trails. We provide low barrier access to outdoor recreation. All of our parks are free and open year-round to the public, so there's no admission fee and there's no requirements of residency to be able to access these parks, which is kind of what is the beauty of the member community system is, you don't have to live in our member towns, but you get the benefit of having these well-managed parks throughout the whole region. Our parks are also used by many local colleges and area schools to conduct research studies, natural resources inventory, and do service learning and environmental education projects on. I know this picture is a little hard to see, it's very detailed, but our parks are part of this kind of greater system of natural areas within the lower Winooski, and we work really closely with other nonprofit organizations to protect the lands and waters within our region. This includes lands within our member communities, fish and wildlife areas, the Intervale Center, Burlington Parks and Rec. I think I'm forgetting a few others, but you can kind of see this like green swath of conserved areas that sort of makes this interconnected natural area throughout the lower Winooski that provides critical wildlife habitat and corridors, and also has significant flood mitigation purposes. Burlington is a very populated area, but we have done a really good job of conserving a lot of our floodplains within the city and within the lower Winooski Valley in Chittenden County. So that's why we have sort of seen, this area has had less of an impact from the flooding events that we've had over the past years because of this kind of strategic conservation of these low-lying areas. So it's just some great pictures of some of the various things that our parks protect. Several of our parks have rare, threatened, and endangered species. The little orchid down on the bottom left there is, forgetting its name, something world pagodia, something. It's a rare orchid that was recently found, thought to be extinct in Vermont, and was found at one of our parks in Colchester. I don't actually even know where it was found. It's a very coveted secret as to where this species was. But here at the Homestead, we know that it's a significant wildlife corridor. We've recorded fisher cats moving through the park, along with like coyotes, fox. We have several fox that actually are residents here within the homestead, and it's also a significant deer wintering area, which is good and bad. All right. So, little land history about the Homestead Park here. And this is probably that we could do a whole other talk about the land use and natural history of this site. We know that it dates way back to pre-contact time, and used heavily by indigenous communities. So it's great that the next talk in January will be a little bit about the Abenaki history. If you're interested in learning, in addition to that, a little bit more about the agricultural presence, indigenous presence here on the land, at the Intervale Center down by their Tommy Thompson community gardens, this summer there was, I think it was 5 or 6 interpretive panels, displays that were installed that depict and talk about the indigenous agriculture history in the Intervale. And when I refer to the Intervale, even though it's on the Intervale Center land, we're also talking about the Intervale as in the low-lying area along a river, which technically the homestead here is part of. Right, so because of the natural features of this area and it being part of this Intervale along the Winooski River, the homestead here has been a sought after place for agriculture, and along with hunting, travel, and commerce for kind of time immemorial. So for similar reasons to the indigenous presence on the land, the site was settled by Ethan Allen and his family here, and used for farming. And the site was then also, over the years, was once a potato farm, and also home to the Pease Grain Company. And so, recognizing its natural and cultural resource significance, the Nature Conservancy, when it was based out of Washington, D.C., before the Vermont Nature Conservancy was established, acquired portions of this property, eventually turning it over to the city of Burlington, and then eventually the Park District acquired it in 1973. The first chunk of this land, which is about 135 acres, and I think it consisted mostly of this upper farm plateau area where we're kind of currently sitting. And then over the years, several other acquisitions occurred, with the last one happening in 1986, with the acquisition of about 141 acres of adjacent land, which I believe is the lower peninsula and farm fields, and it was developed for trails and improvement for recreation access. In recognition of its importance, its habitat and archaeologically importance, and also to protect the view shed of the Allen House. The city of Burlington had it actually in its master plan, specifically recommending that steps be taken to protect the 18th century landscape surrounding the Allen House, which we have tried to do today and work to do in partnership with the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. I found it really interesting to see that competing interest for that 141 acres of the lower parcel here was a racetrack development. So it's just interesting to think of, like, if we hadn't acquired this land, like what could it be right now? It could be very, very much developed, and would be having probably very significant impacts when it comes to these flooding events that were happening both up and downstream. Having this being hardscaped and very developed would have some really, really big impacts. So through the last acquisition of the site, the Land, Water, and Conservation Fund was used for part of the purchase of this site, which ensured that the property remain in have public access and for recreation purposes. All right, and today it is a 284 acre park, has over 4 miles of trails throughout the park, but it's also connected to a much larger network of trails within the city of Burlington, including to the Intervale Center and then up into the Ethan Allen Park along the Burlington bike path. We have about a mile of shoreland that along the peninsula and along the property here, which does provide some management challenges for us with recent flooding in terms of erosion and maintaining buffers. The park is used by thousands of visitors each year, both on a daily basis for outdoor recreation. People come here every day to walk their dog, to run. Many people use it as a commuting corridor to get from the north end of Burlington into downtown. Also, we have a lot of community partners here that I will talk about in a minute that come and use it, including the museum has thousands of visitors each year and growing, which is really great. As I mentioned, it provides important wildlife, habitat, and connection. So one of our partners on the site here, obviously, is the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum. The Park District and the museum's history is very, very much tied together from the inception of the park. The Park District, oh, did it go again? Thank you. So weird that if I go back once, then it stops now. Yes. So when the site was acquired here, recognizing that it had the last known home of Ethan Allen, the Park District, along with at the time the Ethan Allen Homestead Trust was formed to manage and interpret that the site here. The trust dissolved at one point in the 90s, and now it's or early 2000s. Thank you. Now is the Ethan Allen Homestead Museum that we still continue to work very closely with. It's also a site to Alnabiwi, which is a Abenaki nonprofit. With their mission is to learn and teach in the Vermont Abenaki cultural and heritage. You've probably seen their village out back behind the museum here, and they also lease office space in where the Park District offices are in our garage building just across the way. It's also home to the Burlington Forest Preschool. They have 2 classrooms here, and they provide a critical component for the Park District here, and by carrying out part of our mission to provide environmental education. on the site. So we also have several gardening groups here, including the Janet Munt Family Room. They have several gardens here and provide family programming 2 days a week here in the summer. So if you're here on if you're here on Tuesdays, especially Thursdays, this place in the summer on a nice day, this place is popular with many people from the family room. We also have 2 other community gardens managed with the Burlington Area Community Garden Program through Burlington Parks Rec Waterfront Department. And they can't remember how many plots it is here, but it's a significant amount of community plots that it provides. There's also a teaching garden managed by the Vermont Garden Network, formerly the Vermont Community Garden Network. They provide lessons on gardening and seed saving here. So some current projects at the Homestead that we are working on include the restoration of the Wetlands Walk North Boardwalk that was destroyed in 2017, 2018 through, I don't know if you remember that winter, we got a lot of snow, and then it went up to 70 degrees and it all melted and the river flooded, and then that day that it flooded, it flash froze, dropped back down to like 20 degrees. So our boardwalk got, the water rose right up to the boardwalk, and then it flash froze and just completely upended all of the pylons and piers that it sits on. So we are slowly working to get that rehabilitated as it provides invaluable access to a Class 2 wetland, which is just a great resource for both just nature connection and also hundreds of school groups before it was closed used it for environmental education purposes. We're also working on several riparian buffer restoration and expansion projects here down in the lower field that will consist of reconfiguring the community gardens through the New Farms for New Americans. We just realized I totally missed a slide on them. So another community garden organization that we have here is the New Farms for New Americans garden plot through the Association of Africans Living in Vermont. They have a 5-acre farm community garden plot down in the lower section of the park here. And we're working with them to sort of reconfigure that field so that we can increase our buffer and hopefully have a little bit less of an impact on the gardens when the peninsula does flood. But they are a great resource for us to have here. I can't believe I forgot a slide on them. I feel really bad. We also are continuing to do a lot of invasive plant management here at the Homestead, along with all of our other parks. Invasive plants are provide a lot of management challenges to any conservation organization right now. So, and we also have several projects happening in partnership with the museum, including to restore the historic Allen House, and also hopefully, if our grant application is successful, to replace the roof of the barn here and eventually some other just general upgrades to the building. So did mention, flooding a little bit. So our parks do are kind of on the front lines of, providing resilience to when it comes to climate change. We did see, it's okay that this one skipped. So through the 3 floods that we've had within the past year, including the 2 July floods and then the December flood last winter, all 9 of our parks were completely inundated with floodwaters, including the lower peninsula here at the Ethan Allen Homestead we projected about 6 feet of floodwater through each of those events. Woodside Natural Area in Essex, which is the larger picture there, had, we believe, over 9 feet of water. So all the floods did have significant damage to our trail infrastructures, including like to bridges. As you can see, this bridge at Woodside was lifted up and moved about 40 feet up the trail. Happened through all 3 floods. But we have been developing new anchoring systems, so if it happens again, hopefully it doesn't go quite as far. And we've lost significant shore lines at Mays Landing and Durway Island at the mouth of the river, along with here. We've lost about 20,000 square feet of shoreline through all of those flood events. And so while these are significant challenges that we now face and having to mitigate, and it's a new reality that we're kind of facing as part of our management strategies. Our parks are meant to flood, and as I mentioned, we have wetlands and floodplains strategically to keep them open so that they can actually flood and do these things. The damage that we sustained is insignificant compared to what the damage could have been if these had been houses or other community infrastructure that is built right on the river, such as like our neighbors down in Montpelier experienced. So we do, kind of actually in some ways take pride when our lands flood, because it means that we're doing the job and mitigating the impact to our area. So that is pretty much all I have. So thank you very much. Put up my contact information. I managed 2 emails, one just a general email, but then I also included my direct email along with our website. And if you're so inclined to follow us on various social medias, also put those up there. I am the one that oversees them, and I have been a little lacking in being able to update them, but do our best with the social media output. But thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions now.
Lauren,
Yes.
what exactly do you mean by partner with? Do you exchange resources, or is there costs involved, or what does that exactly mean?
Yes, that's a good question. It sort of depends on the organization that we partner with. So for example, partnering with the museum, there is some costs involved with that. They do provide some lease income to us that then goes back into managing the site and the buildings here. Other partnerships, such as like with the Intervale Center and Burlington Parks and Rec, that is more along leveraging resources together. A lot of funding organizations want to see partnerships happening, so that between different entities that are all trying to achieve the same goals. So if we can kind of come together to manage invasive species, for example, that kind of goes across our respective property boundaries, that one that's just more appealing to a grant source, but also is much more efficient in terms of conservation and stewardship management, where we can know what the other entities are doing. We can leverage each other's resources, such as tools. Like the Park District, we actually have a very good selection of tools at our disposal that we then let the Intervale Center or Burlington Parks and Rec or other entities borrow, because it might be cost prohibitive for them to purchase some of the specialized tools used for invasive management. So it all sort of depends on the entity and what goals we're trying to achieve and how we partner together. Yes.
I'm sitting here thinking, this is pretty much under you?
The Park District.
Yes. Of course, you have others and whoever you're partnering with, people there helping too. In your position, I would assume, are close to it or whatever.
Yeah. So in my position with the Park District, I oversee mostly our just administrative responsibilities. I do all of our financial management and along with grant writing and management. Which is a big task. And I strangely really enjoy it. Love to write grants. Our park superintendent, he is the one that oversees all of our parks maintenance and management. So he is the one that's out on the ground every day, evaluating all of our trails, coming up with priority lists, developing our capital management plans, fulfilling our grant requirements. So I write the grants. He usually is the one carrying them out on the ground. He's building all of our trail infrastructures. He also does all of our building maintenance that he can manage. And then our executive director oversees all of that and works very strategically with our member towns to communicate our needs, communicate their needs, and make sure that we're in line with each of our member towns, like conservation stewardship priorities. And the three of us work very closely together. We kind of each, in some ways, do a little bit of each other's job. We work very close together.
Well done.
Thank you. Yes, Andy.
You showed a slide for the wetlands trail I think you said in 2017 froze and warped. And, that's the one that visitors to the museum ask the most about. So can you give us a little bit more information as to what the update is for rebuilding that? And opening, is there a timeline in sight, or is it still waiting for funding?
Still waiting for funding right now, but we are working with the City of Burlington, their conservation board, to hopefully get some funding through their acquisition fund to support it. However, they need to kind of establish a new policy around funding projects that are not on city-owned land, even though we are sort of a subset of city-owned land. But they've been very supportive of it. And so a little background on the Wetlands Walk North. It's a roughly 370-foot elevated boardwalk that runs through the wetland. And so because of it being that elevated boardwalk, it needs to be on special piers so that it can withstand future flooding and these freeze-thaw events that our winters are now seeing. Those piers are very expensive. So for, not even a half mile of trail, it is roughly $200,000 to build this boardwalk. So most funding sources that we have applied for, they are very supportive of this project. They recognize the importance of it both for outdoor recreational access. We also use it to help us manage the wetland so that we can get access into it to manage invasive plants that are popping up in the wetland. But it's a little cost prohibitive to them to, give $200,000 to a very small section of trail where that same amount of money can build an entire trail network somewhere else. So that's where we've been struggling with trying to get that acquired. And we did get a chunk of funds and a partnership grant with the City of Burlington. But we realized as we were trying to spend that chunk that doing this project in phases will actually make the cost even greater because of trying to get the special equipment and contractors out. So it's just more strategic to do it all at once. So we're hoping to get one chunk of funding to support that.
Where exactly is the boardwalk now?
Yes, it is almost directly behind the building here. If you go to where the picnic shelter is and look, I guess that would be east, down into it's through that wetland there. So, yes, Doug.
I understand that the land that the Parks District manages is not supposed to be developed, but I wonder if you ever feel pressure to turn some of it over to be developed. Have you for instance, now we have this housing crisis in Vermont, and they're always looking for ways to utilize land in different ways. I just wondered what the Parks District's position is on pressures like that.
Yes, we very much believe that development and conservation go hand in hand together. You kind of can't have one to some degree without the other. Because of the restrictions that all of our properties have, I don't think we would be able to develop any portion of our land for development. However, future acquisitions, we definitely take that into account with some properties that have been presented to us that could have portions of it be developed. We would definitely consider working with different entities to sort of balance that. But I think right now most of our lands, because they're within the floodplains, they're not, or they're wetlands, they're actually not even developable under current zoning regulations now. But it's definitely something as we acquire more lands that we would want to consider to make sure that there isn't portions of those that could be developed. So yeah, it's definitely something we think about a lot.
Kind of bouncing off that question, I think I've heard from you before that, so you can correct me if this is wrong understanding, but on some of the properties, there's a certain percentage that you have to maintain between developed and undeveloped lands. And if that's correct, then I'm wondering if when those sorts of properties lose acreage from flooding, like you showed, like the shorelines wash away, how does that affect that proportionate relationship? Yeah.
That's a good question.
That's going to keep happening because
yes,
evolved,
yeah,
so.
Yeah. I think those kind of restrictions more apply to like this property that we have development on currently, and not really being able to expand the footprint, and that's for a variety of different reasons. But I'm not really sure if we lost land. I don't think that if we lost land, it would require us to like shrink our current developed footprint, just because that would be a very difficult thing to do. But that's a good question.
Or are there other organizations such as the Winooski Valley Park District? Is there like a Missisquoi Valley Park District?
No, we're pretty unique in the state of Vermont, at least, to have this intermunicipal conservation district. In the Midwest, park districts similar to us are pretty common. They're usually sort of a combination of conservation and recreation districts, kind of like our rec departments. But here in Vermont, we are pretty much the only conservation, park district. I believe there is one, I'm blanking on their name, very similar down in the Montpelier area. And they're much smaller, but we're sort of formed as a intermunicipal coalition to manage the Wrightsville Reservoir there. And so they're sort of almost like, I would say, a hybrid of like a friends. Yeah, it's like a friends group and the park district to be able to get funding to manage the Wrightsville Reservoir in Montpelier. But that's the only other similar entity that I can think of.
Well, Lauren, you're going to be sticking around if there are any other questions. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep. And I did bring some materials, some handouts. There's 2 brochures, one of which is a trail map of 7 of our parks, along with just like a 1-pager that's just sort of very general description of the park district. And then I also brought, if people want to look at them, this was the agreement to create the Union Municipal District to be known as the Winooski Valley Park District. So this was the legislation that was created to form us. And then there's also from 1985 a strategic plan for the park district that is very fascinating to read. So take a look at that.
In addition, so there's the things on this table from the Winooski Valley Park District, and on the table out near the doors, Charlie also brought some stuff for a special event going on this Thursday. Charlie's behind the camera, everybody. And so please take a look at that as well. There's a couple freebies to do with historical information from the museum also on that table. But before you go and grab all the freebies, please help me thank Lauren one last time for this presentation.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for having me.